Hello, my friends. Let's talk about Ezra and the chapters 7 through 12. So this is basically Ezra part 2. And this is actually starting to talk about just the man himself. The skilled scribe, the man who trusted God to work through the civil obedience, through working with the government, through obeying even though it was through great opposition and a lot of trouble. There was a decree that went out to go ahead and rebuild the temple as we knew that, and it had been finished and completed. Ezra went out to make sure that everything was going on well and that all of the temple was being built properly and everyone was doing their jobs. And God supplied all of the needs that Ezra had through the king of Persia at the time, Artaxerxes. They actually said, I'm going to take care of you. Anything that you need, just let me know. He had a lot of respect for God's house, for God's temple, even though he himself was not a follower of God so much, but he knew the people of God, and he understood that God is God. God is the God of Israel. He knew he's a real God. There was a lot of fake deities and pagan mythologies and all these things, but he knew that this was the God of heaven and earth. He knew there was a risk, and he sent Ezra to go take care of it. Now, verse 25 of chapter 7 here, it says, "You, Ezra, according to the wisdom of your God which is in your hand, appoint magistrates and judges, that you may judge all the people in the land, to teach anyone who is ignorant of the laws of God." So Ezra knew there was a need for teachers. God knew that there was a need for teachers in the land, and he raises people up to teach us when we have need of being taught something. And I think that it's important to remember there is never going to be a point where you outgrow your need for education, where you outgrow your need to learn something new. I think that we're constantly growing and learning through new things. I love taking my kids somewhere new, to a new amusement park or museum or anything that just it reignites their flame for knowledge and insight and wisdom, and wondering, what is this, how does this work? There's all these important things. So how does this work, and why does it work that way? And I want to know what the Bible is about in the same way. There's engineers like some. I'm like a Bible engineer. I want to know why everything is put together the way it is and what the message is overall. And I know the message overall is, of course, our salvation for our souls. But I want to understand more of that. And that's why we're studying the Word today together. We're understanding that. Chapter 8 talks about Ezra's fasting. Because he got to the camp of Israel and he saw that he needed help. There wasn't enough Levites to do the ceremonies as priests. So he asked the Lord for help for the ministry. And I think that's a good lesson for all of us in the ministry, and all of us who are looking for the call of God in our hearts, is to find people that can help us do what God has called us to do, to rise up and do. And there are 3 things that he fasts for here: for family, for finances, and for future. And that's important, those 3 things. The 3 F's of fasting. Family, finances, and future. I think we can all do the same thing. And when I say fasting, there's a lot of things that come up in the New Testament about fasting. It's really giving something up. Not necessarily just food, but just giving something up and dedicating that time to God. The time that you would spend searching the television late at night to see what kind of movie you wanted to watch. Instead of doing that, sit in prayer with God. And instead of having lunch every day, you sit in prayer with God. Or you do something. Like when we were praying for the church to grow, when back in high school our church in California was growing and we wanted to have some land. We were praying for the land to be able to be purchased by the church so that we could build there. We did a church-wide fast. And it was amazing. One of the most amazing experiences of my life was giving something up and spending all of my time just prayer walking around the property and asking God for the building. I've recently been asking for God to sell a building that's in town here because the church wants to build on another site. Not my church itself that I go to every Sunday, but one of the churches that I do enjoy seeing and visiting once in a while in our community. And I think that's important for us to help each other, because the church needs to be unified. The more unified we are as the body of Christ, the more powerful things we can do. That's important. God knew that. Ezra saw that he was set apart for service. He shows good stewardship of God's blessings, being protected by God. But most important, he fasts for humility, because they have a big project, the big things that they're about to do. Pray and fast before you do it. But more importantly, chapters 9, 10, 11, and 12 deal with Ezra interceding for the people of God and confessing as a leader. As a good leader, the model for just confessing the sins, the people were again mixing with idolatry. And Ezra was grieved over that. He laid himself out before God and he says, "Oh God, I am ashamed and embarrassed to lift my face to you, for our iniquities have risen. Our guilt has grown up to the heavens." Ezra takes on the sin and the grief of the people, just like Jesus. The picture there again of Jesus. Reading through the book of Ezra just reminds me of the prodigal son, about God calling his people home. It reminds me of Jesus, the good shepherd, bringing his flock to good pasture. It's all that message is there. God is at work. And there's always a remnant. There's these people of Israel that have survived the exile and the slaughter and the horrors of mankind long before they would with World War II and the Holocaust and everything there. But even now they suffer. But here it shows that they started to deal with foreign entanglements in chapter 10. They were fasting and mourning over the things that were happening, and that's it. There was no chapter 11 and 12. I don't know why I said there was an 11 and 12. It's just chapter 10 is the last chapter, and it's talking about, the basic theme of Ezra is restoration and worshiping the king. Kingdom worship. It goes through there at the end of Ezra talking about that. But I just want to say, this main message I get from this is how we as believers should come before God in fasting and prayer. I recently mentioned that to my wife, and I thought, lately we need to just have a family fast, or me and her just fasting something so we could pray more about certain things. And she agreed completely, without having us talked about it first. She already had it on her heart too. And that's a big thing. Whenever the Lord is telling you something and he tells your spouse or a friend or someone else the same thing, and you go to them and you start talking to them about it, and they say, "Yeah, the Lord is telling me that too." That's one of those things where you need to have your heart open and ready to listen to the voice of the Lord whenever he may talk to you, because he is at all times speaking to our souls, my friend. And that is the end of the book of Ezra, and we're going to carry on to the book of Nehemiah next. You have a good evening, my friend. Thank you for joining me. Shalom.